to explain and understand the legislative process, why it matters, especially in this moment. We will have Patricia Ray Torres do a presentation for us. She is I missed a slide here, sorry. And I've got all sorts of things popping up, so I can't see. Okay, so with 35 years of public service in Minnesota, including serving as the first ombudsperson for families for 7 years after advocating for the agency's creation in 2006, she became the first Latina elected to the Minnesota Senate, and after 16 years of serving in the Senate, Patricia opened her own firm, PTR Associates, and so she really is an expert in this area as a legislator, as an advocate, and now working with other orgs that are trying to pass legislation. This educational session is focused on the Minnesota State Legislature. We, of course, have 2 senators and 8 Congress members at the federal level. Here we're focusing on our 67 senators and 134 representatives that represent us across the state. As you can see, you can find those 67 districts across Minnesota based on population. With that, I will let Patricia take the screen, and I will see if I can try and spotlight her here, or maybe Sharon can help me with that.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much for this invitation. I so appreciate this moment, and I think we have almost 50 people online, really, that have decided that you're going to spend this evening with us, learning about how to use your power at the legislature and how to support the work that we're doing collectively to defend our democracy, to protect immigrants, and to pass laws that protect our environment, and all sorts of things that you want to do. So it really is my honor and my pleasure to be part of this moment with you. And I want to tell you a little bit more about my history so that it fits into what we are trying to do today. Really, when I ran for office 20 years ago now, I did it because we were experiencing a moment that was very difficult in politics. Tim Pawlenty was going to be reelected. I had served under the Tim Pawlenty administration in the state, in the executive branch, and worked in there for 8 years. And he cut a lot of programs from Health and Human Services and education. And I felt that it was a moment for me to make a decision. I was either going to stay working in this administration and keep quiet, or go out and speak up. And I decided to get out and speak up. So I made this bold decision that I was going to run for office without a lot of experience or connections in politics. But I discovered really, really fast that I had a lot of connections, and that I knew a lot of people who were interested in doing something about what was happening in that moment politically. And so when I announced, a lot of the people that I worked with in Health and Human Services and in public services learned about it, and they decided to support me immediately, and I got elected. So I became the first Latina elected to the Senate. It was an amazing moment in my life, and served in the Senate for 16 years. And 4 years ago, I decided that 16 years was enough, but I continued to do advocacy at the legislature. And I'm going to talk a little bit about really what that process looks like and how we can work on this collectively. But before I go there, I want to do an exercise with you, because I am not going to assume that you actually know who your legislator is. So I believe that most of you are here tonight because you are doing some advocacy, but I really want to make sure that not only you, but you know an easy way to tell people how to find who are the representatives. So we're going to start there. So I did this little presentation that I'm going to share with you. And Okay, I'm going to try here. So I want to show you right here, we are going to go to Google right now with all of you. If you don't know who your representative is or your senator, you're going to click into a website that when it comes out when you Google who represents me, the Minnesota legislature, the Legislative Coordinating Commission is going to show up as your first link. And here you're going to put your address and just your full address. So I am going to put my address to show you what is going to happen. And when you do that, your representatives are going to show up, right? So this is what is going to show up, and these are my representatives.
And just to pause, we're seeing your PowerPoint, so maybe you just shared the PowerPoint and not your whole screen, because
Okay.
your Google isn't showing up, but we're imagining
Okay.
what it is.
Okay, so if you did this Google your address and you put your address in there, let's see, no. So my Google is showing, but the link is not showing.
There may be a choice whether to share the one window that's open, like the PowerPoint you just showed us, versus show everything on your screen, which maybe you don't want to show everything on your screen, but
Okay.
that would allow you to switch between different applications.
Okay, well, so imagine that you Googled your address and it's showing your representatives and your senators, and I want to see a show of hands as to whether you got there. Could you show me a show of hands? You got there. How many people do we have? If you're able to see everyone. Do we have a majority? Okay. So we are in a place, there you go. This is the screen. Thank you so much. So whose representatives are this? Who's showing me? Bridget? Okay.
A St. Paul address.
St. Paul address, and you have a very important senator who is the majority leader and an amazing representative who just got elected to the House. So everybody at this point know who your representative and your senator is, right? So that is wonderful. So now I think what we're going to go from there is just to really go into this presentation that I developed for you. And what we have in here is starting with understanding the power of knowing somebody. So when you know somebody, and I hope that is your representative and your senator, what that does is that you can go to the legislature knowing that you know this person, that you could engage in a conversation with this person, probably about your neighborhood, probably about something that you have in common with this person. And that helps you build a confidence to get there, to know this person. But then we have to translate that into the strategy, right? The strategy is learning about what is going to happen with this idea that you had about proposing legislation. You know somebody, you know you want to propose this legislation. Now you would like to know how to get there. How do you actually get from this knowing a person, knowing my legislator, or knowing that I am supporting an idea, that I know who my legislator is? Now I want to figure out what is the process that I need to follow in order to make that happen. I would like to know if somebody knows about the Committee of Jurisdiction. Is there anybody who can tell me a little bit about what a committee of jurisdiction is? Once you have an idea, we have to go to a committee, right, in the legislature. And we need to figure out, this is an idea about education. I would like to know, let's say, for instance, that I would like to have free and reduced lunch available to all children in the state of Minnesota, which is already a law. Let's say, sorry about my phone, was just, I didn't know my phone was not. I'm sorry. I have to turn this off. So the first step for me will be to figure out what is the committee of jurisdiction that we need to go to. The committee of jurisdiction, in my idea of fully funding lunch and free lunch and breakfast for everyone, would be going to the education committee. In the education committee, I may or may not have a relationship with one of the senators or the representatives. Then the strategy will be understanding the power of the chair. I am going to, Bridget, if you could help me, because I cannot share again the link. If you could help me go into the link of the Minnesota legislature and clicking into the Minnesota Senate Committee of Education.
And if I could just ask for one clarification. So the committee of jurisdiction is not a committee. It is trying to locate which committee has jurisdiction over the issue you're bringing to the legislature?
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you right now when I say committee of jurisdiction, and I'm trying to figure out where my idea needs to go. Thank you. This is a perfect screen. So where does my idea need to go? This was education idea. I need to figure out, where do I take it? Where do I take it, in the Senate, in the House? Let's say that in the example that Bridget just revealed to me, that she actually is in the district of Senator Murphy. I am going to try to find out if Bridget, who has a relationship with a senator who is Senator Murphy, is actually in the Committee of Education. So I go and try to find out where she is. And here I am. So this is the Committee of Education, and I'm going to click in here. So there are two committees. Now I'm finding two committees, and I don't know where to go. Do I go to finance or do I go to policy? Well, I just said that my idea was that I want to have free and reduced lunch for every kid. So that means I have to have money to pay for that. So I assume that I need to go to the finance committee, correct? So here I am. I am in the Education Finance Committee. And I found out that the chair of this committee is Senator Mary Kunesh. Let's find out if Senator Murphy is in this committee. I go down. All of these senators and representatives are not, no, I am not finding my senator or I'm not finding anybody I know. Where would I go with this idea then? In this moment, I am going to target the chair. That is the power of the chair. A chair has a lot of power in a committee. So I am going to try to meet this chair, try to find out where she is. I'm going to click into Senator Kunesh's website, and I'm going to try to find out what area she represents. Where does she live? This is her district map. So I'm going to try to find out, kind of what area she lives in. Do I know somebody that lives there? Does Indivisible have more members that live in her district? How could I influence this chair? How can I influence this powerful person in this committee? So my idea, my relationship, my knowledge, I can bring all of that together in order to pass legislation. I'm going to go back to, says, okay, here we are. I'm going to back to so the strategy that I am following after I learn about the committee, where I need to go, whether or not I have a relationship with this member, what is the strategy that I'm going to pursue? So my strategy of knowing someone, it didn't work, I don't know this person, but then I am going to try to figure out in the structure, where do I start? My recommendation is that you start with the chair. It always moves in that direction. Starts with the person you know. If the person you know is not available to you or is not in the committee, you go to the chair. I would like to stop here for a moment just to ask the question about relationship and understanding kind of how a committee works. How do you build a relationship with a representative or your senator? And how do you begin to understand the structure of a committee so that you can go and have a connection? I'm going to stop here for a moment and ask if you have a question. Bridget, do we have somebody who has a question?
You could raise your hand, and then if you know how to do that, and that'll pop you to the front. I don't see any questions in the chat.
I saw briefly Susan, one of the Susans, there's several, had a question, but
Okay.
Susan Al.
Yeah, I had a question. So are you saying that only someone who lives in that legislator's district has influence on them?
Not really. Not really. We have the opportunity and really the privilege to be in a state, in a country where we can approach anybody we want to. We have, at the beginning, we said we have 67 senators and 134 representatives. So there is one senator per district and 2 representatives per district. The Senate districts are often are divided into what we call A and B. On average, a Senate district includes 70,000 people. On average, a representative represents between 32,000 to 35,000 people. What is common today, this was not common when I was in office, but what is very common today is that when you call a senator or a representative, they will tell you, we will give preference to a meeting with our constituents. It is very common practice today. If you are not a constituent of a representative or a senator, it will take you longer to get that appointment or to get the attention of that individual. You have influence over every senator and over every representative, but you are directly connected and you are much more likely to obtain a meeting with your representative and your senator simply because they work for you. So what I am finding more and more as things get more complicated at the legislature is that even today, you try to send an email and they will ask you, are you a constituent? Or you call, they will ask, are you a constituent? And then they will give you preference. So it is very important to start with your representative and your senator. And we will move forward later about really understanding the dynamic of how to connect with other representatives and why you have to target some of these representatives or these senators. Laura?
Oh, hi, thanks. Just to go back maybe a second as someone quite new to this, I was wondering about, you mentioned like you have an idea and then you go to your representative. How much, to make sure I'm not wasting my representative's time, like how much, what kind of, how well formulated should your idea kind of be? Like, what would be a appropriate preparation for sort of a proposal? Like, oh, it turns out there's a regulation against your idea for some other reason. Like, it just so that you're more efficient.
Yes, this is a very important question. I run into a lot of people who have brilliant ideas and they really want to connect with their representatives right away. One thing that you're going to find is that Minnesota has absolutely outstanding legislation already in place. It is really, really unlikely that you're going to find an idea that in some form is not already in place. It is really unlikely.
I love
It
that.
may
That's
need,
great.
it may need an additional piece, right? It may need more funding. It may need, and then there are some of big ideas that we have been pursuing, like Senator John Marty, who has been pursuing healthcare for all for the last 35 years of his career, right? And we have not been able to accomplish. An idea that was pursued for several years and Senator Fatex has accomplished, which is free college for people who, families who make under $80,000. It just became law 2 years ago. So there are big ideas for which we have to absolutely continue to advocate. But there are, so many laws in place in the state of Minnesota that is good for you to do your research, get an idea of what is in there, and then move forward. And belonging to places like Indivisible, organizations and groups like Indivisible gives you that understanding of, what are we advocating as a group? What are we trying to move forward this year? It helps a lot when you belong to groups that are keeping you informed about what these ideas that need to become law are. And then they organize us around these ideas and these concepts so that we can become collective advocates.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So you're saying that it is best to go to your representative, but if you have a representative that is not currently interested and or
Gotcha. See if it's interesting.
wanting
Yeah,
to
I couldn't hear you before. Yeah, I think
a representative who isn't even willing to have town halls or anything, vaguely interested in hearing their constituents' views. Do you go to an adjacent? Where do you go then? Okay, so I know that you're using a scenario at the present time that we don't know anyone on that committee, but maybe my representative is on that committee, but that representative has no interest in hearing what her constituents or his constituents would like to have done. So, do you still say that we should go to the head of that committee, or should we go to an adjacent
Okay.
representative in our immediate in the area?
Okay. Thank you for that question. And I am sure, that many of you may find yourselves in that situation. We have over 50 people, so it is likely that you find yourselves in a situation where your representative and your senator simply does not agree with the idea or the concept or the issue that you are going to bring to his or her attention. So there are two things that we always try to ask people to do. Number one, do your visit regardless. These individuals, these representatives need to know that you live in their district and that you care about the issue and that likely you are organizing in your district for that issue. It is very important. Many people that live in districts where they feel like they are not represented, they abandon their representatives, and these representatives really have no idea that they have actually several constituents, not just you, that are opposing his or her views or that have ideas. So my recommendation is that you do. Don't go alone. Try to recruit a neighbor, a friend who lives in the district so that they know that there is more than one of you. And then look into the committee to figure out if there are other representatives that actually would agree with you. Because again, I am going back to number one, which is you need to start with legislators to build your confidence. For many of you, this process is really a process that you haven't done before. You have not advocated, and just to go into an office where you will not be appreciated, where you will be discounted, is a very frustrating process. So I will try to do both. I will visit with a representative that is part of that committee or is an advocate for your issue, even if they are not in the committee. Go to a person with whom you agree so that you learn from that person. You know that the issue is a very important issue, that you do have a friend at the legislature, that your issue is well received in that office or in many other offices. It just so happened that your representative does not receive it well. So I encourage you to do both, to build the confidence with the people that agree with you, but also to exercise your own power to visit your representative. So I am going to move, and then I'm going to take a few more questions. So people ask about the process. What happens then when you actually, this idea that you have, or this idea that was brought to you by Indivisible, actually gets a hearing? From an idea, you have an author, and then this author gets a hearing. And in the hearing, in the committee of jurisdiction, that bill passes. So, hurrah, the first part of advocacy, which is we go to this committee and we use, in this case that we were talking about, the Committee of Education. So that meant that all of you went, all of you advocated in the committee, and the chair was, agreeable to it. She had Senator Kunish, who was the chair, had a hearing, and they passed this bill. Then what? What happened to that bill after that? The bill could move into two directions. One direction is that that bill is sent to the floor, the Senate floor or the House floor, where after just the committee, like you saw, about 12 or 14 members voted on it, they passed it. And if that bill was passed in committee by itself, it will go directly to the floor or the Senate or the floor of the House by itself, is one bill. Or it could be included in an omnibus bill. An omnibus bill means that that small bill that was just about funding breakfast and lunch for kids was included in the entire bill of education, where there were many, many, many bills that were heard in committee. And that becomes part of one bill. Everything that was heard in that committee becomes part of a big bill that they call the omnibus bill. And oftentimes, today, more than likely, bills are now part of omnibus bills. So an omnibus bill is a huge bill that is either education or health and human services or transportation or, there's kind of these big committees pass the omnibus bill and it goes to the floor with everything. So your piece is part of a big bill that goes to the Senate. And that closes really that process, which is the committee process. You were successful in passing this bill all the way to committee, and it went all the way to the floor. And I'm going to stop there because these stops are complicated and take too many pieces. And I want to ask if people have questions, and then I will move to my next part. I believe that Julie has a question.
Yes, Patricia, thank you. I was at a couple hearings recently, and I'm a newbie, but I heard many times them saying they were going to lay over the bill. And so when they lay over are they going to have more discussion before they send it on to that omnibus? Or what happens, what actually happens when they say layover?
Yes, that is more and more, Julie, thank you for that question, because that is more and more the practice of today. It is very confusing to the public when the chair said, we are laying over for possible inclusion. Possible inclusion. What that means is that that bill that we were advocating for will go into an omnibus bill, may go to an omnibus bill. I really don't like this process. And I really feel that this is an issue that we need to advocate for. And I am grateful for that question. Because many times we leave committee and we go like, oh, we got a hearing in the committee. And the chair says that it is laid over for possible inclusion. And we feel like we're done. And then we come back and it is in the omnibus bill that goes to the floor, and we realize that our bill is not in the omnibus bill that goes to the floor. It disappeared because it says for possible inclusion. It didn't say to be included. It says for possible inclusion. And so the public wonders, well, what happened there? Who made the decision after you had a hearing that this actually will not go? What happened? What happened to the language now that is going to the Senate floor or the House floor and my bill is not in it? Well, let me tell you what happened was that the chair and the caucus, meaning the DFL caucus or the Republican caucus, whomever was in charge of that, and right now, for instance, in the Senate, it is the DFL because they are the majority, and in the House, it will be both. In the House is a Republican chair and a Democratic chair are negotiating. They are negotiating before the omnibus bill is presented again in the floor. They are negotiating, and some provisions are not going to make it. Although in the hearing, it said it was laid over for possible inclusion. Well, it was not possible, is the conclusion, and it didn't show up, and it will not be moving to the floor.
Do they ever say, well, when they're negotiating, do they ever say, well, this would be fine if we just make a couple changes, or is it too late for any changes, amendments? Is that too late? It has to go to the next session then?
It is not too late, and the advocacy is not over. Okay? So what you need to understand is that it just so happened that it's going to move to the floor, and that moment of pending time is a very important advocacy time, because many people feel like, oh, it moved for possible inclusion, so I don't need to call my representative anymore because the committee hearing just passed and I am okay. Nope, your advocacy is not over. You have to continue to advocate for your language until you see it in the floor, moving to the floor of the Senate and the House, coming back as an omnibus bill, and I am going to show you now what is the next step. Okay?
Can you take one more question? CE
Yes.
Hill's had their hand raised for a while.
Okay.
And then we'll move on.
Please help me. Sharon and Bridget, help me because I don't
Yeah.
see everyone. So
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand down.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Okay, and then we actually have a question in the chat. And so it has to do with if it's not included in the omnibus or voted forward as a singular bill, is it dead at that point? We're kind of in the middle of that process right now in the legislature where it has to get out of a committee.
okay. So I am going to tell you in my next so after this process, we wonder, right? So it moved, it didn't move. Is our advocacy process kind of over? So I'm going to go to my next. Okay. So you need to keep in mind key dates, right? The key dates really tell you when an idea actually kind of moved forward, didn't move forward, what happened, right? So I'm going to use the 2026 dates because those dates are really what determines, is my idea moving forward, my advocacy, what happened now. So for the 2026, we started on February 17th. Really, you prepare your idea before. So one thing that I have to tell you that I really should have started with this is that in reality, you never start a process in January or in February. You have to start early. You have to start your advocacy in, September, October, start formulating ideas right now. You are just really, preparing for this year and the next year. So when session starts in January and February, by March, you have the first deadline. They said first deadline is March 27. What does that mean? The first deadline really means that all of your policy bills, that means only policy that do not have budget. You remember my idea of funding, your idea, our idea in this group of funding lunch and breakfast? Well, that was a funding, that was a budget idea. So if I had said that I'm just going to change some policy issues, my deadline would have been March 27. But because my idea was funding, my deadline is April 17. Okay? There are 2 more weeks for budget bills. Those are bills that have a fiscal note attached to them. They cost money. Those typically have more time. Now, most bills have policy on funding, right? And so when that happens, really the deadline for those bills is April 17 for both the policy and the funding. So they are attached. What happened with the question you have about, is my bill or my idea dead now? Because it was a policy bill, it didn't have money, it was heard, but it didn't make it, or it didn't make the deadline at all, it didn't have a hearing. Well, let me tell you, your idea, your bill, that bill that was drafted that never got a hearing, or maybe got a hearing and died because nobody voted for it and the chair could not move it for possible inclusion, may show up as a form of an amendment. That means the omnibus bill that goes to the floor is open for all 67 members of the Senate or all 134 members of the House to amend it. So when you have these long sessions in the floor, in the House and the Senate, you can have your idea inserted into an omnibus bill. It is a very difficult thing to do, especially if that idea was already killed in committee, because that means that the chair and these committee members already disapprove of that. So they will bring those discussions to the floor and it will be very difficult. But the process is not over for your idea. The process is not over for the bill. You can amend those bills into an omnibus bill. So the deadlines really become a very important frame for you to understand when your deadlines are. So by April 17, we're supposed to pass pretty much everything in committee, and there will be no committee hearings anymore. Committee hearings are over. Whatever happens, there will be no more committees. There will be no more hearings in committee. But the omnibus bills will go to the floor, or the independent bills. They go directly to the floor. So then the advocacy becomes the floor. And that is more complicated because now you don't have to focus only in that committee. Now you have to focus on everyone because you need to have 34 votes in the House and 135 and 75 in the Senate, right? So it's a very complicated task because your advocacy just exploded in terms of the volume of advocacy that you have to do in order to get all of those votes in the floor. So that is a process for your idea and how a bill can become law and how you use your voice and your advocacy. Always, my advice is focus your energy in committee because it's so much easier to find the friends, to find the chair, to find somebody in that committee that would agree with you, that will really become your strongest advocate. Once that deadline passes, it's not that it's an impossibility to do it. It's just that the advocacy effort becomes so much more difficult because then you have to work with the entire body, not just the committee of jurisdiction. So in terms of advocacy, people say, you know, what is your best approach? And I said, work those 4 weeks with all your heart and all your energy, because then you're done. Then you know that committee moved it, you have the support, you have these advocates, you have a force moving to the floor. Not that the other part will never happen, it's just that it gets more complicated. So I always tell my organizations and my advocates, let's put all of our effort and our communication into that front, which is the first basically 7 weeks of session. I am going to stop here for a moment and entertain some questions.
I saw it's down now, but Susan, again, did you have another question?
I have forgotten what it was. I didn't write it down, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I think this is fabulous advice, and probably a lot of people have joined today wondering how they can be more present with the process as it plays out this year. And we have a lot of different reasons. Because of this time frame that we just talked about, I think the best practical advice for the time being is to pay attention to your emails from Unidos, Copal, Mirac, Isaiah, wherever you're getting your action items from, because they will have been doing this work for you the last several months, if not year. So they're going to know what's going on. And so really try to pay more attention to emails than you have been. Although I know you've been doing a lot of that the last few months.
Well, and your advice that we need to keep watching the bills, I think it's easy to think, oh, it made it, possibly in the omnibus, so we don't need to keep advocating on it. And that, we know that things get cut once they're in conference committee. So that's really good advice.
There was another comment about it goes to the revisor's office. I can say from my own business experience that is definitely an issue. And so that's yet another step when things get actually put into regulations.
Yes, so I'm going to share something that is, let me go back to there is an issue that has not been an issue before. I don't know why this is becoming now an issue. That is, kind of when to present your idea. And I really, really ask you to pay attention to this, especially if you're with a group, to ask about, what is happening in October, November with an idea. Because many people are engaging in January And in January, what happens is that these groups and all of us are looking for an author for this bill, right? We're looking for an author. We have the concept, we have the legislation, and what we're looking for is for a term called jacket this language. That means that you have to put it in a format that the revisor's office has to put it together. And they call it a jacket because they put a first page that is a color for the House and a color for the Senate. So for the Senate, so this idea is drafted, yeah, you send it and say Senator Dibble agrees to be the author of that bill. And so he has to figure out how to draft it in a bill format, right? And so you work with him, and we call that a jacketing process. That means the revisor's office has to write it now. It went to the author, saw it, yeah, I want to do this, we all agree. Now it has to go to the revisor's office, and they put it in a format, and they call that a jacket. In the House is a green jacket, meaning just the first page is green. And the yellow jacket has a first page that is a yellow page. So we call them the yellow jackets and the green jackets. And internally, everybody's, where is the green jacket? We lost the green jackets. That means that the representative didn't get their bill. After those jackets are drafted by the revisor's office, they send that for a number, right? And that number is what you now know as the public kind of recognize it. You say Senate File 7044, right? That jacket is drafted into a form of a bill and is given a number. And that number becomes public, and then everybody will click in and will be posted in the website for the author, right? And that's where everybody will see the bill. Until then, just the people who are working on this idea. What is complicated right now is that, I have a bill to support an idea to lower the prices of home insurance. We're working that with Interfaith Power and Light. We sent that language for that bill on January 10th. I still don't have the bill. It has not come out of the revisor's office. It's still being drafted. So that means I would never have it. It didn't make it. I don't know how something like this could happen, but it is happening, that many people didn't actually get from here into having a bill at all. So it's already deadline for the first deadline, March 27, passed already, and I don't even have the bill because it has not been drafted. I cannot believe that's happening, but that's happening a lot. I don't know if some people have run into that problem, but there is a big problem, and this is why you have to start so early with your author and really push hard.
Are you
Because if they
saying,
don't get those bills drafted on time, they will never be ready.
are you saying the bill number is given by the revisor's office, or?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Who is the revisor's office?
It's the staff. So it's a staff. The revisor's office are the office of the revisors, and their only function is to receive this language from the representatives and the senators, draft that, and make sure that when they draft this language, it fits into Minnesota codes, right? They have to place it. So they have to look for, where does this language belong? Is it drafted correctly? Of course, there are other staff, the research staff in the Senate and the research staff in the House also take a first step to making sure that when they send it to the revisor is already codified correctly, right? It's placed in the correct statute, in the correct chapter, and then it goes to the revisors, and the revisors does kind of further placement and work and research to make sure it is codified correctly. So they are very mechanic in a way. They have no opinion. They do not add anything or take anything away from the legislation other than from the proposed bill, other than to make sure that mechanically, legislatively, and it's correctly drafted and placed. They have no legal, no political opinion. They're just legal and, staff that is very versed on, how the mechanics of language gets crafted and codified. I think I can move now into the executive branch, because I think there was a process, I think, Bridget, that you wanted me to cover with respect to
Yes.
the executive branch, right?
Right.
So let's say that our idea, we met the deadlines and we covered all of that, and the process went to the floor. It passed the floor of the Senate and it passed the floor of the House. But then this bill that started very exactly the same, the House amended it and it made it different. The House can very well amend a lot of bills now because they have a half and half kind of a composition. So the House changed the bill and it made it very different. So now the House version and the Senate version are completely different bills. What happens then? What happens then is that it goes to conference committee. That means that the Senate will appoint some members and the House will appoint some members. Most times is about 4 and 4 or 3 and 3. And then they come together, Senate and House, and they have to figure out how to agree. They have to conference those bills that are different now, and they have to negotiate. And you can advocate again. And now it gets a little bit easier again, because you have a committee again. You have 3 members of the House and 3 members of the Senate who have this big bill that is very different. And let's say in this scenario, you might completely disagree with the House and you want the Senate to prevail. You want the Senate version. So you advocate and you go to the House and you tell these members that you want the Senate version, that you don't want the House. And they will have hearings. They will present the 2 versions and you can attend those hearings and you can bring people, you can testify. So the process opens again. And then the process closes. Most time that process today is a closed process and they don't have hearings. It's just these members that were appointed by the House and the Senate that become the negotiators of that bill. I hate that. We need to change that. We need to make sure that we go back to where we were before, where these negotiations are public and they hear from the public about your opinion about these versions. That is something that we need to do collectively. But in any case, they negotiate behind doors, they negotiate. The governor is also present in those negotiations that go behind doors, and they usually send their commissioners, because the executive branch really has a ton of information that could be provided to these conference committee members to really help negotiate the final bill. Those negotiations are incredibly important. The executive branch is often involved in conference committee negotiations. And then once they finish these negotiations and they agree and say, well, we're going to take a little bit of the version in the House and a little bit, it's a compromise, and we form now a new bill. That bill is the result of the conference committee. And that goes back to the Senate and the House, and oftentimes it will not be changed, because that is what we consider kind of third reading, and that means the bill has been negotiated and it is in its final version. It goes back to the Senate floor goes back to the Senate House, they vote on it, and the process is over. After conference committee, it is very unlikely that a bill gets changed. Sometimes it does, but it's very difficult. And after it passes the floor of the House and the floor of the Senate, it goes to the governor for his signature. No changes absolutely after that. There is no way to change anything. The governor is only a signer. He can only sign a bill, and with his signature, a bill becomes law. And that is the process. That's how the process ends. Now, one thing that you also need to know is that the governor is also a proponent of legislation. So he brings bills to the legislature, just like every member of the House and the Senate. He can bring a proposal, and he obviously every year he brings his education bill, his health and human services bill, his transportation bill, and he proposed that to the legislature. And it is a very good idea to work with the governor's office to have your idea incorporated into the governor's bill, because the governor's bill is always a very important bill, especially when you have a majority that is of the same party of the governor. So when the House and the Senate are of the same party of the governor, when we had a trifecta, they worked together and the governor's bills became law, all of them, because obviously you want your governor to be successful. So it is a good idea to work with the governor as well in your advocacy to make sure that the governor also incorporates the ideas of your group into his proposal. So the governor is a proponent, but mechanically he's also at the end of the process. He signs the final bill.
It looks like Julie has a question.
Julie?
Yeah, actually it was one back when you were talking about the draft and revision stage. I think. Well, somebody put a bug in my ear and said it's a good idea to become friends with the LAs, the legislative assistants. Are they able to, do they have kind of an in to find out, like, if your bill is kind of in flux and it's in that draft stage, are they able to check on that for you? If if you're working with your representative and their LA, their legislative assistant, is that a way of tracking your bill when it's in that stage?
Absolutely, it is. And it's a very good question. Bridget, if you could help me go again to the Senate Education Committee. So I'm going to illustrate something about staff. I am going to show you how to really understand the structure of a committee and how important your question is.
Sorry, what did you want me to search for? Sorry, just kidding.
The committee, the education committee that we were illustrating with the idea. So go back to Senator Kunish and the committee, the education committee in the Senate, the finance committee.
Got it.
So we're going to show you the power of the staff. It is absolutely important that you create relationships with the staff. And the reason is that these members are so busy that they rely very heavily on staff for their schedule, for, putting together the meetings with their constituents, for tracking schedule, trying to figure out, this constituent. Could you imagine having to track, hundreds of constituents calling you for ideas on everything? It's just impossible. So the committee administrators and the legislative assistants play a significant role in helping these members figure out kind of what's going on, especially with constituents, right? Because they are so busy doing their legislative work that it's hard for them to pay attention. So the legislative assistants keep track of like, oh my God, we have received 300 calls from these people about this bill. So this bill is very important for these constituents. And when you request a hearing, the legislative assistants go like, Senator, you have received 300 calls from these, constituents about the same bill. So they're paying attention to this bill and they want to meet with you. So they keep track of all of that. And it's so important that you have this relationship, that you know these people just as much as you know your representative or your senator. So in the Education Committee, I am going to show you how this works and who you need to pay attention to the staff. So if you go here, right, this is the Education Committee, this is the Finance Committee. We learned that the chair is Senator Mary Kunesh, right? And if you go down into this, go down, okay, right here, you see staff. In the staff, you see committee administrator. The committee administrator is the person who is in charge of helping this committee with the agendas. The committee administrator knows everything that is going on in that committee. She knows what bills are going to be heard, who is authoring those bills, if that bill was from Senator Mike Quaid, what is in that bill, who is talking to her about it. That is the committee administrator. The legislative assistant, so this will be Emma Zelmer. She is the committee administrator for education. And then the legislative assistant here, that is the legislative assistant for Mary Kunesh, right? She is only for Mary Kunesh. She only knows about these messages and everything that is just for Senator Kunesh. Emma is for the committee. She knows what's going on in the committee, the agenda for the committee, the bills of the committee. Obviously, she works very closely with the chair, but the legislative assistant, Tessa, is her legislative assistant. That is a very, very important, those are very important. This legislative assistant to the vice chair, in this case, Olivia is the vice chair of the committee. If you go up, these large committees all have vice chairs. So the vice chair of this committee is Heather Gustafson. So Heather Gustafson, she's the vice chair of the Education Committee. She's an important member, and you will communicate with her legislative assistant. That's why she's listed. And then you also have the ranking minority leader, which in this case is a Republican, Jason Rarick. And probably down here, you will have the phone number for the ranking minority leader legislative assistant. No, it's not listed, but it should be. And council are just the people who help the members, with these bills, with very technical questions. Unless you are a lobbyist, you almost never get in touch with these people. And the reason lobbyists get in touch with these people is because they are asking for very technical questions on bills. And these people are attorneys who pretty much know exactly what's going on with the bill. And if there is a question on language, they can answer it in a more substantive way. All right. That's a lot of information we're providing. But I'm hoping that, if you are interested in this, I think the advice of really trying to connect with groups and follow their guidance is very good. It is a lot of technical information, but I am just so grateful that you have decided to just, this is power. And when you know how this process works, then you can exercise your power. You can really use it and say, I'm going to call this legislative administrator. I'm going to call, the vice chair to start, or I know the chair, or, knowledge is power. And in the legislature, knowledge is very strong power.
Thank you so much. Yes, and now that was, I learned things that I hadn't heard, and I've spent quite a bit of time at the legislature, so that was great. So thank you so much for your time. I think you'll be able to hang on if we have questions at the end, if you're able. But I'm going to ask Dave now to talk about how it is that regular citizens can advocate at the Capitol, and because he is something who's doing this every day.
Thanks, Bridget. And thanks, Patricia. It's great to hear from you, and great to see like all the different like flows of experience that you have kind of leading into the wisdom that you share. So I'll be really quick. I'm gonna make 3 points. And then I think I'm gonna tell a very quick story, like a 2-minute. But I'm gonna see if I can provoke any questions or new interest in bringing a community organizing lens to legislative advocacy. That's what I do. I've been a community, labor, campus policy organizer for about 30 years. And so I'm going to make 3 points. And also, I think I'll start by saying, you guys have already passed the first test in terms of bringing an organizing lens to advocacy. You're here as part of a collective organization. And like, unless, raise your hand if you're an oligarch. Can somebody just put like the little thumbs up thing, or like the little heart emoji that floats up if you're an oligarch? Okay, we might have had an oligarch in here before, but they left, and that's okay. I'm not an oligarch. But if you're not, you need to use, you need grassroots power, and you need to be part of a collective organization. Because that's one thing thank you. That's one thing that you kind of see you need in this legislative process, with how complicated it is. You can try to know and understand everything and have relationships everywhere, or you can be part of a collective organization like Indivisible. So that's really important. And there were some of the questions in the chat about like, well, how do I know who's interested in end of life care? Or how do I know who are the groups that are lobbying against or for a certain issue? Partly being part of Cat Cameo, there we go. She's 17, she does what she wants. Part of answering those questions is being part of a collective organization that's kind of part of the ecosystem, that might have a lobbyist that knows everybody, that has a policy advocate or an organizer who's been around for a really long time. That helps. Okay, so the first of my 3 points is deepen your relationships. Be like those penguins. If you go to the legislature for like a day on the Hill or something, I mean, it's amazing, it's important, and especially if it's your first time, it's like nerve-wracking, and you know, you might be a little bit nervous, you're passionate, but the experience, I'm going to try to poke the screen here for emphasis. The experience of the legislator is awesome. These are constituents or a constituent. If I'm seeing them once and I don't see them again the entire session, oh gosh, can you go back? It's all.
Sorry.
That's all. Oh, oh yes. See, you guys hang in there. Don't anybody leave early, because you've got a really cool story coming.
I don't even know what I did. Like clicking on things I can't see.
It's fine. That was in Rochester. That was Head Start Parent Policy Council in Rochester.
Hit the back arrow.
Like a long time ago.
The back arrow.
I'm gonna keep on going, because I really
keep going.
Yeah, I mean, the picture is great. Just remember the penguins. Yeah. So thinking about building a relationship with your legislator means you have to think about a broader timeline with multiple touch points, right? Yeah, that's me. That was like 10 years ago. So, you know, so again, being part of a collective, it's Bridget, you can also just turn off the share too. It doesn't matter.
No, I think I got there.
You got it? Cool. Oh, back to the penguin. Okay. So if you're part of a collective organization, you can think about how to put your effort and energy in, so you're not just putting some energy into like getting to the day on the Hill and getting in front of your legislator once. You have to think about like, how do you build that relationship over time? I mean, the follow-up, like if you're in a district and you're starting to build a relationship with your legislator and you're really passionate about housing or immigrant rights or climate, and you're like, okay, we're going to go and talk about this bill. Afterwards, maybe you only had 3 or 4 people that could go and schlep over to the Capitol. But if you have 50 people that are passionate about the issue that are in the district, you can send even a follow-up message signed by everybody, or a snail mail letter signed by everybody that references the meeting. That is part of this. Legislator will realize, oh, I'm in a conversation with a group of passionate constituents from my district. Really important. Last part of trying to get to be the penguin. I mean, I'm not saying you should fall in love with your legislator, but anyway, building that relationship is ask them what they are passionate about. Legislators don't get asked that a lot. They have a lot of meetings with lobbyists who are infinitely less cool and amazing than Patricia, who are just like demanding stuff of them. And then they have meetings with constituents who are like, here are my talking points. I'm nervous as heck. Please support this bill. Can you imagine having a group of constituents come to you and say, what is your vision for serving our community? Like, what's the one thing you really want to accomplish? That's a powerful and relational, connective, humanizing question to ask. And once you get a legislator talking, you may find that there's something that you share. That's an opportunity to work together, even if it's not the one thing that you came there to talk about, because you care about multiple issues. If you're grounded in the community and the legislator says, well, I really, really want to get, trees taken care of, whatever it is, you file that knowledge, because that's a chance to work with the legislator to achieve their goals too. Okay, can we go on to the next slide? You can see I have trouble being brief. Okay, the next slide is expand. So first it was expand into a real ongoing relationship with your legislator. This is expand beyond just the legislative session. And I think I put it best when I was preparing this slide. Your issue doesn't stay confined within these walls of the legislature, the Capitol, or these weeks. So neither should you, neither should your advocacy, right? If you're thinking about a particular issue around immigrant justice or healthcare access, think about where in the community this is most strongly felt, because you're going to find the people who are maybe even more impacted by this than you. And if you're bringing a community organizing lens, you better be in relationship, in dialogue with the people who are most impacted by this problem. They're going to have powerful perspectives, powerful voices, and good Lord, good grief, Charlie Brown, you do not want to be, in a committee hearing or talking to a legislator and they say, well, you're talking about this issue. Have you talked to the people who are impacted by it? And you have to turn red and say, well, no, don't be that advocate. Okay, so expanding your focus beyond just what happens during session. Patricia was saying you gotta go before session when people are starting to think about like, what are we going to try to pass around housing? But also I'm saying here, think about a whole cycle of like, how does this issue touch our community? If you're talking about housing justice and you're in Richfield, go talk to people at the Concierge or Linwood Commons apartments. Go talk to the people in the little mobile home community that became a cooperative at 73rd and Lyndale, because there are some really amazing people there who can talk firsthand about housing justice being part of that. We took cooperative ownership over this park so that we could improve it and have more of a democratic say in our living space. Okay, so that's expanding beyond just the session. Okay, can we do, last thing on this slide. Wait, Bridget, no. Other stakeholders. If you go to apartment complexes or we're interested in low-income renters not getting displaced. Well, we're also going to go to a local food shelf or social service agency, St. Stephen's or Veep, because a lot of folks that are going through housing crises are going to end up there because they're going to need groceries or emergency assistance. Well, in that case, you may find other stakeholders, whether they're impacted folks or the frontline practitioners who work with them, who are going to help you make your case and sharpen your argument. Okay, Bridget, next slide, please. I need to start saying things like, and in closing, because we're getting close to time and it's late. So now wrapping up my talk, in these final moments of my talk.
6 minutes.
6 minutes. Oh gosh, it's unfair. Expand beyond your district. And Patricia also noted this. And I noted that you got to be part of a collective organization. You're not going to move legislation in this big state if you are only in one district. Whether it's your labor union or it's the Sierra Club or Interfaith Power and Light or Indivisible, you need to be part of a collective, powerful grassroots organization, and that can get you beyond just your district. And again, Patricia was talking about the committee pathway for a bill. Well, if you have Indivisible members in all the different districts that this little bill is going to travel through, you have powerful advocates that can speak up for it to those legislators as constituents along the way. Also, again, for perspective and insight, because if I'm concerned about housing, but I am only talking to folks in Minneapolis and St. Paul, again, Charlie Brown is going to get to the legislature and say, I'm really passionate about housing. They're going to say, well, do you know how it's impacting folks in Marshall and Worthington and Slayton in the southwest part of the state? No. Well, you'll broaden your perspective if you take the time to learn how this issue is hitting, as the young people say, in other parts of the state. Okay. I am going to, in a shocking move, I'm going to censor myself and I'm not going to tell my story because it would take too long, but I'm ultra available for questions and I'll hand it back to Bridget in case people have questions now, and I can put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Sharon, are there any more questions that we haven't gotten to?
I haven't seen any further questions. We've been kind of catching them as we go.
Yeah, no, it was great to do it.
There was one last question: how do we connect with other Indivisible chapters? Well, good question. And to be out in public at all, I just want to say, building your community is the #1 most important thing you can do. Whether it's your knitting group, gardening, PTO, whatever. You're building your community is going to make whatever you wind up doing, and I've measured this, up to 400% more effective. So you are doing the right thing by just making friends and taking the time every week to do something with good friends.
Okay, Bridget, can I close us up here? You want me to?
Yes,
okay.
Please.
Okay. Bridget, thank you so much. Thank you to Twin Cities Indivisible and Richfield Indivisible for all, Sharon and Helene and everybody who went to put this together. Patricia, thank you so much. We are sending you good energy and solidarity, and you're inspiring, and you always have been for all these years. So folks, please do reach out. We need to send good energy to each other too. These are really tough times, and being in community and being part of this collective ecosystem of social justice work is really important. So thank you. Stay warm, be safe, and we'll see you next time. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.